almost nothing gets into this country. And almost nothing gets out. Desert at one end, ice at the other, mountains down one side, open ocean down the other. This is Chile. A place so sealed off from the world that much of what lives here lives nowhere else. And almost none of it lives in peace. Because this country belongs to its hunters. Something in the open grass that comes the last few steps in silence. Something small moving through the branches, long after dark. A ghost in the high rocks that almost no one has ever laid eyes on. Wings circling overhead, waiting for anything that stops moving. And out in the cold water, killers that arrive in the hundreds and hunters one. People come here for the mountains. They almost never see the animal lying in the grass beside them, watching them walk past. So how does the rarest life on the continent survive? With a hunter in every direction and nowhere left to run. How do the hunted last a single night? And how do any of them hold on as the little that's left of their world keeps disappearing? From the driest ground on Earth to the ice at the end of the world, almost nothing here shows itself. Animals nobody would believe were living in a place like this. Animals nobody would want to meet out in the open. And every one of them sees you long before you see them. At the bottom of South America, the forest thins into open grassland, and this country belongs to a single hunter. The puma carries the widest range of any land mammal in the Americas, from the deserts of the north all the way down to the ice at the end of the continent. For all that reach, it is not one of the big roaring cats, and it is in fact the largest cat on Earth that purrs instead. It lives alone across a huge territory, and out here it survives almost entirely off one animal. The puma is an ambush hunter that creeps in close and wins or loses in a single short rush because it cannot run anything down over distance. When it does connect, it kills by clamping onto the throat and holding on until the struggle stops. A female needs a kill like this to survive, and even more when she has cubs waiting for her to come back. One guanaco can feed her for the better part of a week. Her cubs will stay with her for up to 2 years while she teaches them to do the same. But a hunt like that fails far more often than it works, because a full-grown guanaco is dangerous prey and usually gets away. The guanaco that shakes off a puma is the largest wild animal on the steppe, and the whole herd survives by staying alert. It is the wild cousin of the llama, and these herds have never been tamed by anyone. They live in family bands held by a single male, while the young males pushed out of those groups run together in herds of their own. One animal always stands as a sentinel with its head up, and a high, almost laughing alarm call sends the rest running before a cat can close the gap. When two males fight over a group of females, they rear up, bite at each other's necks and legs, and spit as they go. Their feet are soft and padded for rough ground, and they can hold a fast pace for miles across the country that hides nothing. A newborn is up on its feet within an hour and running the same day, because out here anything that cannot keep up does not last. They even get by where the water runs salty and the wind never stops, in a place that would starve most large grazers. Sharing that same grassland is a bird that answers danger the way the guanaco does, by running. The lesser Rhea cannot fly, but it can outpace almost anything that chases it across open ground. The strange part is how it breeds. Several females lay their eggs in one nest, and then the male does everything, sitting on the eggs and raising the chicks on his own. Guarding that nest is a full-time job, because a clutch of eggs is the richest meal on the steppe. The moment the father turns his back, the boldest thief on the steppe takes his chance. But the Rhea comes back, and a grown male is big enough and angry enough to make the thief regret it. Where the steppe breaks against the mountains lives a deer most Chileans have never seen in the wild. The Huemul is so tied to this country that it stands on the national coat of arms, beside the condor. It keeps to steep, broken slopes and has become one of the rarest deer on Earth, down to scattered pockets in the southern Andes. Higher still, in the cold rock, lives an animal that was hunted almost to nothing for the thing that keeps it warm. The short-tailed chinchilla grows the densest fur of any animal on land, so thick that a flea cannot move through it. More than 50 hairs grow from a single follicle, holding the mountain cold away from its skin. That coat nearly wiped the species out, and today it hangs on in only a few high hidden colonies. West of those dry peaks, the mountains catch the ocean's rain, and the open country gives way to one of the wettest forests on Earth. Down in the tangled green lives one of the smallest deer in the world, small enough to vanish into the ferns. The Pudú spends its whole life in dense cover, feeding on the leaves and bamboo it can reach without stepping into the open. When something startles it, it freezes, gives a sharp bark, and bolts along tunnels worn through the undergrowth. Down in that same undergrowth, a small bird gives itself away with its voice. The chukao rarely flies far, hopping across the forest floor with its tail cocked upright, and its ringing call carries much farther than the bird itself. Local tradition holds that the side the call comes from tells a traveller whether the day ahead is safe. It is bold for its size and will come into the open to inspect anything that enters its patch. The chukao is not the only hunter working this floor. Darwin's fox is one of the rarest dogs on Earth, a dark little predator that Charles Darwin first collected on the island of Chiloé. Unlike most foxes, it barely leaves the forest, keeping to the shadows of the thick temperate woodland where it was found. On the mainland, it hangs on in only a few patches of shrinking forest. Something even harder to spot shares the leaf litter under the same trees. Darwin's frog looks exactly like a dead leaf, down to a pointed snout that breaks up its shape until the moment it moves. But the strangest thing about it is how it raises its young. The male takes the tadpoles into his vocal sac and carries them there, and when they are ready, fully formed froglets hop out of his mouth. By dusk, the smallest cat in the Americas is on the move through the same trees. The Güiña is no bigger than a house cat, spotted, and so tied to this forest that clearing the trees is the surest way to lose it. It hunts birds and rodents through the branches at night, and will slip into a farmyard after chickens when the forest runs short. And most of the times, a nest full of chicks is an easy meal if it can climb to one. Tonight it climbs to a hole, cut high in an old beech tree. That hole was chiselled by the largest woodpecker in South America, and its owners are not far away. The Magellanic woodpecker. It hammers into the old southern beech trees for the fat grubs living under the bark, and the blows carry down the whole valley. A single bird can chisel straight into a solid trunk to reach a grub nothing else can touch. The female works alongside him, in black, and a pair holds a wide stretch of forest as their own. Their young stay on after fledging, following the parents trunk to trunk, and learning where the best wood is. They depend on old and dying timber, the kind only a forest left standing for centuries can provide. Cut the old growth trees, and the biggest woodpecker on the continent is the first to vanish. The same bill that splits hard wood becomes a weapon the moment the nest is in danger. the Güiña came for an easy meal and leaves with nothing, driven off by two birds far smaller than itself. One of the animals living in that old wood is not what it looks like. The Monito del Monte looks like a mouse and is named for a monkey, but it is really a marsupial that carries its young in a pouch like a kangaroo. It is the last survivor of an ancient line, closer to the marsupials of Australia than to anything else in the Americas. Through the cold months it curls up and slows its body almost to a stop, living off fat stored at the base of its tail. Far above the forest, past the last of the trees, the air thins and the ground opens into cold, bare, high plain. The Vicuña lives higher than almost any other grazing animal, out on the Altiplano, where the nights freeze even in summer. It is the wild ancestor of the alpaca, and it grows the finest, warmest fleece of any animal in the world. That wool was once reserved for Inca royalty, and no one but the emperor was allowed to wear it. Herds are small, each led by one male, who drives off rivals and watches for danger. They can only drink fresh water, so they never stray far from a spring or a snowmelt stream. The air up here holds little oxygen, and their blood carries far more of it than ours ever could at that height. Rounded up and sheared, then let go alive, they still supply the most expensive wool on earth. Where the Vicuña grazes, a hunter works the same slopes, the same bold fox that robbed the Rhea far down on the steppe. The Culpeo is the second largest wild dog in South America and the biggest fox in this whole country. It takes rodents, hares and birds and will pull down a Vicuña calf when it gets the chance. It also cleans up what it finds, following the smell of a kill to whatever the big cats have left behind. In the far south, its numbers rise and fall with the introduced hares that now feed much of the population. It is bold enough to raid a farm, which has long put it at odds with the people who graze animals up here. Among the rocks, the fox hunts is an animal that looks like a rabbit, but is really closer to a chinchilla. The mountain vizcacha spends the cold mornings sunbathing on the stones, warming up before it feeds. At the first shadow overhead, it vanishes into a crack in the rock. It has to, because it is the favourite prey of one of the rarest cats on Earth. That cat is the Andean cat, and almost no one has ever seen one in the wild. It is one of the least known cats in the world, tied to these high rocks and to the vizcachas that live among them. It looks like a snow leopard shrunk down. With a long, thick, banded tail, it wraps around itself against the cold. So few are left, and they live so thinly spread that no one can put a firm number on them. The cat is not the only thing crossing this ground. Something is working underneath it. The Andean hairy armadillo spends its life digging, turning up insects, roots and grubs with heavy front claws. In softer soil, it can dig fast enough to bury itself out of sight in seconds. The armoured shell is its backup, and when it cannot dig away in time, it pulls in tight and lets the plates take the hit. The coarse hair between those plates is what its lowland cousins lack, and it holds heat through freezing Andean nights. Few other armadillos could survive the cold this one lives in. Where the meltwater gathers into shallow salt lakes, the ground turns pink with one of the strangest birds up here. The Andean flamingo is the rarest flamingo in the world, found only on these high lakes of the central Andes. It feeds with its head upside down in the water, pumping it through a beak that strains out tiny algae. That same algae slowly turns its feathers pink, so the bird is coloured by its own food. The lakes it needs sit at brutal altitude and freeze solid at the edges on winter nights. Thousands nest together on the open salt, building little cones of mud to lift the eggs above the crust. When a lake dries out, the whole flock has to move on and find another, sometimes far across the mountains. Over all of it moves the largest flying bird on the continent. The Andean condor rides the mountain winds on a wingspan that can top 3 meters, and it can stay up for hours without a single beat. It is a vulture that lives on the dead, cleaning up the carcasses the cats and foxes leave behind. Nothing that dies in these mountains goes to waste while the condors are watching. It shares the national coat of arms with the Huemul, the two animals chosen to stand for Chile. A pair mates for life and raises a single chick so slowly that it depends on them for well over a year. When the time finally comes, that chick has to leave a high cliff ledge with nothing but air beneath it. Follow those wings down the western slope, and the green drains away until the land turns into the driest desert on Earth. In parts of the Atacama, rain has never once been recorded, and yet even here, things are alive. The Chilean rose tarantula hunts at night and can go months between meals, waiting out the long dry with almost no food. Slow and calm, It deals with a threat by flicking tiny barbed hairs off its back into the face of whatever comes too close. In all that dryness, a single thread of water can hold a life found nowhere else. The lower water frog lives in one small stream in the Atacama and nowhere else on the planet. A few years ago, that stream was pumped almost dry, and the whole species came down to a handful of survivors. They were caught and taken to a zoo to breed, which is the only reason the frog still exists at all. Out on that open ground moves something that looks like a tiny panda and stings like almost nothing else. The panda ant is not an ant at all, but a wasp whose females have no wings and spend their lives running the desert floor. Its black and white coat is a warning, backed by a sting so fierce it has earned the nickname cow killer. That same desert runs all the way to the sea, where everything changes. A cold current sweeps up this coast and turns the water into one of the richest fishing grounds on Earth. Down in it hunts the Humboldt squid, a 2-metre predator that flashes red and white as it moves. They hunt in packs of hundreds, driving fish toward the surface and seizing them with a hooked ringed grip. The fishermen who haul them up call them red devils, and a big one can pull a person off a boat. The same rich water feeds one of the most elegant seabirds in the world. The Inca tern nests along this coast in cliffs and old guano and wears a white moustache curling back from a blood-red beak. It shadows sea lions, whales and fishing boats, snatching small fish and scraps stirred up near the surface. That moustache is more than decoration, because the best marked birds are the healthiest and raise the most chicks. Working the rocks just below the birds is the smallest marine otter in the world. The chungungo, or sea cat, lives right where the Pacific slams into the shore, in the crash of the surf. It carries no thick layer of blubber, so it has to feed almost constantly, prizing crabs and shellfish off the rocks. It is one of the rarest otters anywhere, hunted for its fur and pushed onto a thin strip of wild coast. Further south, the harsh coast gives way to cold lagoons and river mouths, and the desert becomes a distant memory. The black-necked swan is the largest waterfowl in South America, and it almost never leaves the water. Its legs sit so far back on its body that it can barely walk on land, though on the water it is fast and strong. It feeds by sinking that long black neck under the surface to reach the plants and small creatures on the bottom. pairs stay together for life and share the work, taking turns on the nest and guarding the young. The cygnets ride on their parents' backs for the first weeks, tucked into the feathers away from the cold and out of reach. A single sheltered wetland can gather these swans by the thousand. When the water is drained or fouled, they are the first to leave, and their absence is how people know a wetland is dying. Where the land finally runs out, the coast shatters into islands and cold open sea, and the water thickens with life. The South American sea lion hauls out on these shores in the thousands, packed along the rocks and beaches. The big males grow a heavy mane and fight to hold a stretch of beach crowded with females. A bull can outweigh every female he guards, and he will not leave his patch to feed for weeks. The colonies are loud, crowded and dangerous, with pups slipping between animals many times their size. All that gathered life draws the one hunter these seas fear most. Out beyond the surf, something has learned exactly when the colony is most exposed. That hunter is the orca, the largest dolphin in the world and the top predator of every ocean it enters. Along this coast, some of them do something seen almost nowhere else, riding a wave straight onto the beach to grab a sea lion pup before twisting back into the water. It is a dangerous, learned trick, and the adults spend years teaching it to their young. Orcas live in tight family pods that stay together for life, led by the oldest females. Each pod has its own calls, its own hunting methods, and its own traditions handed down the generations. Some groups live on seals, others on fish, and others on hunting the largest whales alive. They are not whales at all, but the biggest members of the dolphin family. Nothing in the sea hunts them, and almost nothing they hunt gets a second chance. The only exceptions are the giants, the few animals here too big for even an orca to be sure of. The same seas that feed the orca feed millions of birds that come ashore only to breed. The Magellanic penguin does not nest in the open, but digs a burrow into the coastal soil and raises its chicks underground. A pair returns to the very same burrow year after year and finds each other again in a colony of thousands. They swim for their food, chasing fish and squid, far out to sea, and coming back with full bellies for the young. On land they bray like a donkey, which is how their close cousins earn the name jackass penguin. The colonies stretch for miles, every burrow a few steps from the next. At sea they are fast and sharp, and on land they shuffle along, exposed to everything that walks the shore. Each spring the same beaches fill again with the same birds, back from months alone on the ocean. Sharing these cold channels is one of the smallest and most striking dolphins in the world. The Commerson's dolphin is marked so sharply in black and white that people call it the panda of the sea. It is barely longer than a person, racing through the shallows and riding the waves off the bow of a boat. Seen from above, a pod scatters and turns across the surface like a handful of thrown stones. They stay close to this coast all year, in water far too cold for most of their kind. Every winter the giants arrive, coming in close to shore to give birth in the sheltered bays. The southern right whale can be as long as a bus and rolls at the surface with its calf right beside it. Each one carries a pattern of rough white patches on its head, unique enough to tell every individual apart. It has no fin on its back, and it feeds by straining tiny animals through plates of baleen instead of teeth. Whalers once called it the right whale to kill because it was slow and floated when it was dead. They were cut down to almost nothing, and only slowly are they filling these bays again. A mother stays in the shallows for weeks, letting her calf grow strong before the long trip back to open water. The calf drinks hundreds of litres of rich milk a day and puts on weight faster than almost any animal alive. The reason she keeps it in so close is out past the bay, waiting. When a pod finds a calf away from shelter, they work to drive it away from its mother. But a full-grown right whale carries a tail that can crush bone, and a mother defending her calf can kill an orca outright. The hunters that feared nothing all along this coast turn away from the one animal too big to beat. Feeding in the deep gulfs nearby is the largest animal that has ever lived. The blue whale is bigger than any dinosaur, longer than a basketball court, with a heart the size of a small car. It lives on some of the smallest prey in the ocean, swallowing huge mouthfuls of tiny shrimp-like krill. The waters off southern Chile are one of the few places on Earth where these whales gather to feed and raise their young. For a long time, no one realised they were here until a hidden feeding ground turned up among the islands. A single call from one of these whales can travel for hundreds of kilometres through the water. Hauled out on the wildest of these beaches is the largest seal on the planet. A big male southern elephant seal can weigh more than a small truck, several times the size of the females he guards. He gets his name from the great inflatable nose he throws back and roars through to warn off rivals. When two bulls will not back down, they rear up chest to chest and tear at each other until one gives way. Away from the beach, it is one of the deepest divers in the sea, going far below where any light reaches. It can hold a single dive for well over an hour, hunting in the cold black water below. The winners hold the beach and father most of the pups, while the losers may never breed at all. Far out in the Pacific, on a single small island, lives a bird found nowhere else on Earth. The Juan Fernandez firecrown is a hummingbird, the male a deep glowing red, clinging to one patch of forest on one Chilean island. Goats, rabbits and cats brought to the island nearly finished it off, and it now clings on in small numbers. Its whole world is that one island, and if the forest there goes, so does the bird. Farther out still, around the loneliest island in the world, swims a fish that lives only there. The Easter Island butterflyfish drifts over the reefs of Rapa Nui, thousands of kilometres from any mainland. On an island that isolated, the few animals that reach it and survive often become something found in no other water. When winter closes in, the whales turn north, the swans lift off the freezing lagoons, and the high lakes ice over until spring. But the puma stays, hunting the same steppe she was born on, and somewhere in the grass her cubs are learning to do the same. As long as this country keeps its wild edges, from the desert to the ice, the whole strange cast of it will still be here when the season turns again. This is Chile, a land of untamed beauty and wildlife at every turn. Now, if you don't want to miss the most extraordinary wonders of Amazon, check out this video.